How beautiful is Australia? Welcome back, crew. I'm Todd. This is Toxic Garage Customs, and we're sitting in the back of Toxic. Why? Because it's a beautiful, warm, sunny winter's day, and you'd be mad not to. But you didn't come here to watch me sit in the back of my truck. So in this episode, we're back on the HQ 1-tonner chassis rebuild. This is episode 5. There'll be one more episode, and then we're done. In this episode, we move along and we rebuild the front calipers, get the rear end in, get the fuel tank in, and a few other things, a bit of painting. But most importantly, we get our port steering and alignment power steering conversion kit in. Why? Because it's a good thing. 3.5 turns, lock to lock, responsive, not twitchy, just a beautiful thing. And it's a bolt-in kit. I'm going to rave about that more in the video, so why don't you grab yourself a cold adult beverage or a warm cuppa, find a comfy chair, put your feet up and watch me for the next hour. And I'll catch you a little bit later. Enjoy. You may recall at the end of the last video, I realised my sway bar needed to be moved forward. I've done that. Fixed the other holes, drilled and tapped some new holes. It's all good, plenty of clearance there. Should have just done it in the first place, but I thought it'd work. That's all right. Then I have used some brake cleaner. So I've gone through and used some brake cleaner to give it a good clean, scrape off. I'll give them a coat of paint as well, so I'll make sure they're really clean. They were never painted before, but I think they always look good when they're painted. So this is the rubber seal that when the piston slides up and down in the bore, it slides along on that. So this is the wearing part. This part here, you don't have to replace it, but I bought replacement items. This is the piston out of the other one. It had some damage on it. I was never going to reuse that one. Whereas this one is, yeah, reusable really, but I'm not going to. I bought new ones. So what I've got is, I've got new pistons and so nice, clean, shiny items. And then I also have a seal kit. Now this, I'm pretty sure is for, these are Gerlock metal calipers. Now I'm pretty sure this is interchangeable with another one as well, because there's a little thing in here. What you have, you only need one seal and one dust boot. So it comes with 2 seals and 1 dust boot. So I'll need the dust boot. I'll need one of the seals, and I'll just compare it with what came out originally. And what came out originally is this one here. So this is the one that I'll be using. And this one becomes redundant. And it even says on this little piece of paper here, compare the thickness of the seal with that was removed from the caliper and choose the correct thickness for servicing. Guide pin boots may not be suitable for some models. And that would be these. So we've got these little boots. So on the PBR calipers, and I'm not sure some of the Gerlocks maybe, but on the PBR calipers they got sliding pins. So we don't need those. We have a new bleeder nipple, we'll be using that. And a bleeder nipple cap. So realistically, the parts that we're going to be replacing are the piston, the seal, the dust boot, the bleeder nipple, and the boot for the bleeder nipple. And there are some little copper washers that go between the brake hose and the caliper. I'll reuse the old ones, and I've got new brake hoses as well. On these little plates here just come off, and they allow you to split the caliper in half. So we've got one here, we've got one here. Always a good idea to take photos of this stuff so you remember how it goes together. I've got 2 calipers that are not going to be used sitting right beside me, so I don't really need to do that. And then that comes apart. So this is the part that mounts to the stub axle, and this is the part that moves. So this part goes on there, and when you apply your foot on the brake, it moves backwards and forwards, pulls one caliper, one brake pad towards the disc on one side and one towards the other. So I'm going to go through and give this a really good clean up in here, and I'll give this a clean up, and I'll bring you back once I've done that. Okay, everything's nice and clean. You may have noticed I like working on clean things. So this now is a lot better inside. So I've cleaned up the whole thing, but you can see, you might be able to see there's still some little spots of rust there, but I'm not concerned about it. If I get one of these old pistons here and show you, if I pop that in, it just slides in nicely. So it slides in nicely there, which means it's not grabbing on anything. So I'm happy enough with that, because the only part that contacts the seal is this area through here. So it's all good. So what I'm going to do to make this job easier is use red rubber grease. Now this stuff here protects, lubricates rubber components and seals. Most importantly, it says here, it's compatible with brake fluid and it's suitable for this sort of assembly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to liberally put some of this around this edge here where the seal goes, and I'll show you in a moment where that is. And so I'll get plenty of that around there, because there's a dust boot that I've got to get in and there's the seal that I've got to get in. So I'm just going to pop the seal in, and it goes into a little groove in there. Remember, there's two seals in this particular kit. It was the bigger one, the wider one out of the kit that I used, and there's no bottom or top to them either, which is good, so you can't put the things in upside down. Now I'm putting a good coating of grease around the inside of that seal. Now this dust boot here, it goes just there and it stops dust from getting in there, and it eventually goes around the lip of that, so it tucks into a lip, very top of that, and goes in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bit more lube and put it around here. And I'm going to slide the seal just down the bottom like that, like that. I'm going to extend it out, and by putting it on here, it'll allow me to get this thing together. A bit more lube around this bottom lip here. Now, what I'm going to do, so the piston goes in with that hollow at the top. What I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this so that I can see it. I've got to get this lip just here in around this area, this groove just here. So that's my first task. Get that in there. So it's usually not too hard. Lubricant helps. I'm not to puncture it, but I'll just push it in there. Try and push it in there anyway. Get in there. Okay. So pretty short. Yep. Okay. So I've got that in that bottom area. Now what I need to do is get the piston down in the seal. Now this is a tight fit, so you've got to make sure that it's square. And then what I find is if I just get a hammer and apply good, firm, even pressure, it'll push down. But I don't want to pop the seal out in the process. So I've got to try and keep it square. Okay, this guy's fought me a little bit, but I've got it started. So I've got the hammer here, and I've just got to push this in, and when it bottoms out, the dust boot should seat itself around that lip, and then it's all good. So that piston is in there, and the dust boot is slid up and gone into that groove, and it's in the top there. So basically that should work up and down. I'm going to check it, and what I'm going to do to check it is I'll just put something in here to stop it coming out all the way, and I'm just going to put some air behind it and just get it to move up and down a bit. So if I might need to block off one of the holes. So if I block off where the pipe goes in and just put some air where the nipple is, you can see it moves the piston up. So that just stopped it from popping out all the way. So you can see the piston has come up, seal is around it. Got a little bit of dust in there now. We can clean that up, and that just goes back down nicely. So this thing is ready to have a coat of paint put on it. And of course, as far as part numbers go, this is the pistons, and this is the seal kit. Piston for these is 63.5mm by 46mm piston. Got those pieces masked up, so areas that I don't want paint to get into. That's an old bleeder nipple, so I'm not worried about that. But I've just masked up the pistons and the rubbers and so on, any areas that I specifically don't want to get paint on. I'm just going to put some high heat paint on those, so let's see what I've got. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Do we go red or do we go blue? I can feel you cringing behind the screen. I think I'll either go black or silver. And I'll go black. And since I don't have two cans of the same of anything, we'll mix and match. So we'll go, I think that's black, black and black. We'll use those. Another outstanding winter's day. So, what am I doing? As you can see, I got the chassis all draped in rags so that I can throw a bit of paint just on this back bit, and then it's done. Then I can tick that one off. In the meantime, what I've done, they're painted. We'll put that together at some stage. But out here, taking advantage of the weather, I've got some stuff ready to go into top coat. So steering box, steering linkage, fuel filler neck, brake drums, couple of brackets and things, fuel tank, rear end and tail shaft. Now anyone that has done any painting will tell you that you need a completely dust-free environment and try and avoid windy days. Well, there's not a breeze. Dust-free environment, not a consideration at the moment. I'm painting, that's what's happening. So I'm going to throw some shiny black stuff down on this. I've got a labour force coming over this weekend, as in Sam, Josh, Lily. Lily's muscles are always handy, thanks Lily. So I'm going to try and get them to give me a hand to flip this thing up the right way, put the diff in it, etc, etc, etc. So I'll get it all painted in preparation for that. Without further ado, I'm going to throw some paint together and throw it down. Well, this day has not changed. It is still beautiful. And I have to say that I don't appear to have any dust in any of these pieces. I'm going to kill that guinea fowl. Look at this diff. Look at the shine from that, will you? Look at that. Beautiful. Tail shaft. Tank. Haven't paid the brake drums. I don't know, the paint might peel off, but we'll see. A couple of bolts and brackets and things. Now, you might be wondering, why is Todd painting the steering box? Doesn't he use the port steering and suspension steering upgrade boxes in his cars? Yes, he does. This baby can go to someone else because I have a delivery. When you get a port steering and alignment HQ to WB steering box upgrade, not only is the steering box upgrade good, look at the packaging, will you? It's even got a handle, lift here. So I'll be opening this sometime very soon, but that baby is going to bolt straight into that spot just there without any modification at all. Port steering and alignment comes to the party once again. Only the best for Toxic Garage Customs. Righto, well, Josh and Sam and I, and Davina for a second, have flipped the chassis over. Sam is currently working on my motorbike, it's got a flat battery. We flipped it over, so that's good. Here I was talking up Lily before about saying how good she was helping me lift, and she skipped on us. Something about having a wisdom tooth removed and a face bone swollen up. Thinking of you, Lily. Okay, so I'm going to roll the diff under here. Got some wheels on it just here. And then we will put some old rusty springs under there to hold it in place. And then I think we can go under building the brakes. And at some point I'll rip those wheels back off and put the front calipers on. And that shiny new steering box that Stewie sent me. So as far as the shackles go, that's right. Ooh. As far as the shackles go for the rear springs, I'm using that same rubber grease that I assembled the brake calipers with. So I'm just going to put some rubber grease on this so that when it slides in the rubber bushing, it lubricates it. Oh, and I did say I'd explain this. So this bolt here, this is a high tensile bolt that's specifically for these leaf springs. So it's threaded from there to there. And on the end here, it's actually round. And the reason it's round is that it sits into the bottom of the diff. So it sits into the location on the pads just here, just there. So it's the locator. And then the nut end of it, this end, it drops down through the bottom of these retaining plates here. And so that helps to locate it in place as well. I'll show you this when I put it all together. These need to be cut to length. The reason I haven't cut them is for the reason I explained, so that I can put more or less springs in there depending on what I need, more leaves I mean. So they just get cut. These are specific bolts. These were $80 for these two bolts. I guess you could use something else, but this is the right product for the job. I've rebuilt these leaves already. What I mean by that, I stripped the pack down, so I took that off, took this off, undid that, separated them. You don't need a compressor, you don't need to compress them or anything like that, they just undo. And took that off. There's just tabs on there that you can bend up and out to separate the springs. I pressed out the old bush, so this is a press sort of a job. Again, the freezer, then press it in there. I did use the press. You could probably do it in a vise as well. And then these bushings here, these this is the shackle end at the other end, so that the hanger bit I mean. So there's 8 of these bushes, 1 on either side here, and then 1 on either side at the top of the hanger. So there and on the other side, and the end I just showed you goes in here on that hook there. The pressed end goes into here. I videoed all that, the whole remanufacture of these, and the video got lost. So I apologise for that. I cleaned all the springs up. I like to put grease in between them. So I've got a thin layer of grease between all of those leaves to prevent it rusting and just take out noise and just keep it lubricated. And then I threw a coat of paint over it. So that's what you missed out on in the video, and I apologise. So we'll pop all this in. Okay, so I went to assemble the springs and then couldn't find the front bolts. this is one of them, and as you'll see, it's corroded down through here, so I will be replacing them. But the point of what I want to show you here is that a couple of tools that might be handy to have in your kit. So this is the other bolt. If you look at this bolt, you can see just on the end of it here, it's a little bit damaged, and that's from where it's come out when it's been removed or something like that. A little bit damaged there, but it's otherwise okay as far as thread goes. Now, this actually will take a nut okay, so this one is not too much of an issue. Having said that, it stops about there. So this one was quite damaged on the end. Why I'm showing you this, there's a couple of tools that I would suggest that you put in your kit if you're going to be rebuilding cars. Not in any particular order, but this one here. So this one here is a thread file. And what you'll see, UNC and UNF, or UNF, UFC, fine thread, coarse thread, imperial. So you can see there the different sizes, 13, 14 and so on. That's the thread count. So these particular bolts just here, the thread count is 13. That's 13 threads per inch. And you've got this little bit on the end here. And if I put that against there, it is exactly the right thread. Now if I put a different one, it's a bit hard to show you on the camera, but they're not going to be the same. So I can identify the thread that way. And then what I can do, using the file, the appropriate file, you can go through and clean up the threads. So just go through and you can clean them, go around the whole thing. Now, I could have just done that, but because I've got a tap and die set, then I grabbed the appropriate one and I worked out what size it was, obviously, and I loaded it in here. So this is a die. Tap is the one that cuts a hole, threads a hole like a nut, and a tap cleans up a bolt or a thread like I'm doing. So I got this, and you can see it's a 1/2 inch diameter bolt, so the thickness of the bolt, and then it's an NG13, which is the thread count. And I went through and I cleaned the thread up. Now, that's a really handy tool. When I did the sway bar, this is the same tool I used. I think I used a 5/16 fine thread, and I tapped holes in there. Might have been a coarse thread. But this is a very handy tool for that and for generally working on cars in general. So while they're not cheap, I do suggest you get one. Those files, they're about 50 bucks, I think. This kit, I can't remember, maybe about $100. This doesn't do metric. I've got a separate metric set. Actually, I haven't got the whole set. I just bought individual pieces that I use, and then I just use the actual tools to use them. So this holds the dies, and this holds the taps. And I've got some other smaller type ones as well that fit into tighter spaces as far as the handles. But overall, that is what you're after. Let's get this shackle in. So what I like to do is just put a bit of grease on the bolt. So once again, I'm just using high temperature bearing grease. Why? Because that's what I've got at the moment. This will just stop them from rusting inside, and also just allow it to swivel on the inside of the bush just that little bit better. So, got a reasonable coating on there. And now I'm going to lift the spring up and pop the bolt through. And what I don't want to do is damage the thread in the process. So the idea is to get it as straight as possible in the first place. So I'm going to lift this up, and I've got the spring so that it's pretty much perfectly in the line that it needs to. It's just a matter of getting the holes lined up now. And if I could actually see, then I could get the bolt in there. Okay, so just slide that through. And they don't use washers on these. They just get tightened up, and again they've got those self-capturing nuts, as in they're like a nylock, but they're just sort of got an end on them that prevents them from coming undone. So I've got it through halfway. What I don't want to do is now damage the thread pushing it through. So I just got to move the spring around until I get it in place. If I have to force it, there's something wrong. Generally speaking, things get damaged when you have to force them. Now I'm just going to use a rubber mallet just to tap it through, but if there's too much force, I will stop. And that way, not damaging the thread. Now all I need to do is put the nut on and tighten those up really tight. Again, I'll be replacing those bolts, so this is more for entertainment value. So that goes on. You see that starts grabbing, it's because the end of the bolt has got 3 little bent over lug bits. So 3/4. Just going to do those up. I can do them up nice and tight. Then that is the pivot point for the spring. Now what happens is this point just goes up and down as the suspension moves. The back part, the shackle, allows it to, the spring to become longer or shorter as it flattens out. As it flattens out, it becomes longer. And flattening out is meaning that it's taking a bump because it's getting pushed up. And when you lift the car up, right up off the ground, then the spring becomes very curved and the shackle pulls right the way forward to allow that. But I'll show that when we get there. So, as I said, no washers, no lock washers or anything like that. That's really tight. And then this moves up and down. It's limited by what's hitting it at the moment. So we've got those 2 in now. So the next step, I'm going to roll the diff forward, get it orientated the right way, as in pointing forward. Make sure when you roll your diff in, it's the right way. It's not upside down, so that'll get annoying when you've got to take it out. So I'll roll it forward. I'll get the locating pins up through those locators on the diff. Then I'll lift the back of it up, pop the shackles in, and then we can put the U-bolts in. So rather than talk about it, I'll do it. Well, as it turned out, I was putting that shackle in and I managed to slightly damage one of the threads. So, focus. So I did exactly as I explained before. I went through and cleaned the thread up. What I did on the other side, I've got both parts of this lubricated with some rubber grease. I just need to lift this up. Now, this slides in from the side, so once you get in the right place, just slide it in. Because the new bushes are new and they haven't yet been squashed, I can't get the nuts and the washers on all at the same time. There's not enough thread showing. So what I'm doing is I'm just doing the nuts up in the first place, or doing one of the nuts up in the first place to compress the bushes a little bit, and then I'm putting the other one on and so on. I'll show you what I'm doing. So put this plate on. Again, got to be careful not to damage the threads. That one there actually looks a bit burred. I might do this before I try. I thought I cleaned these up already. That's okay. Okay, so this little plate goes on. Which way does it go? It goes on. Now there's not much of the thread showing there. It's a bit hard to compress the bush by hand. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to put on a nut and a washer, and then I'll tighten that up and it'll pull the other side in so that I can get it on with a nut and washer and basically just creep up on it. Now if I was some sort of a hoon or a rev head, which I might be, I might choose to put lowering blocks in. Now these things may or may not be legal, so take that as you will. But how they work, I'm not putting these in incident. How these work, that hole there sits on the locating pin. That there goes in the bottom of the diff, just there, where that locating pin would otherwise go. So these are about 1.5 inches, I think. So that would go in between there and there, and what it does, it pushes the diff up by that distance, which I think this is probably about 2 inches, pushes the diff up by about that distance, and what that is actually doing is lowering the body 2 inches because it's lifting the diff up. So that goes in there. And then to do that, you need longer U-bolts to go through. They need to be that much longer than standard. I don't have any U-bolts. Otherwise, I would probably be tempted to put this in. Now, I could take that rubber block out and it lowers it less. So you can see that would almost fit in there perfectly. In fact, I'll see if I can get it in there just to show you. So firstly, that sits like that. And then the diff sits like that. And you can see the difference in height there. Then you drop your U-bolts down, one here, one on the other side, and it goes into the plate that goes on the bottom that captures the shock absorber, so that plate there. You can see these bolts aren't long enough, so these U-bolts, so these lowering blocks won't be going in. So usually when you buy lowering blocks, you get U-bolts with them. I use the U-bolts for something else, and I've got the lowering blocks but not the bolts. But I can buy U-bolts if I choose to go this way at some stage. Might actually have a look, see what it's done to the height. Okay, bit hard to tell because it's just sitting there at the moment, so really tells me nothing. Diff's bolted in, so drop the U-bolts down, got it all positioned, all done up nice and tight, beautiful. So now I can mount the shock absorbers. So I've got to find the bolts for them, but the shocks mount from here down to the bolt, that plate there. So I've got those bolts, just got to find those ones. Time to put these shock absorbers in. So that's them there. This is how they come packaged, like the front ones. Now they come with these sleeves as well. I'm pretty sure I don't need them. Must be for different bolt sizes. The reason I say that is this bolt, which goes down the bottom, fits in this nicely. So don't need a spacer on that one. And this one here, the bolt that I've got there fits in there, so pretty sure I don't need the spacers. So I presume some cars have undersized bolts in comparison to these or something, or maybe it's just in case you haven't got the right bolts. Whatever, I'm not using them. So let's get them in. As far as the shock absorbers go, a couple of things you want to bear in mind. The bolts here, you want to push in from the back of the car and put the nut on this side. The reason being is that when the fuel tank's over here, so the fuel tank mounts there, if you have it like I've got here, which is the wrong way, then if you want to change the shock absorber, you'll never be able to get the bolt back out. You have to take the fuel tank out to get the bolt out. So I'm going to turn this around so that if I need to change the shock absorber at any point in time, I can leave the fuel tank there. All I have to do is take the nut and washer off, and then I can take the bolt that way. So that's in the wrong way. This one is in the right way. Bolt at the back of the car. Get the top in here first, and then swing this up, get it in place, and slide the bolt through. Now the bolts for there, they've got this thicker shaft, so that thicker part just there will bottom out when it goes right the way. That'll bottom out just there. So that is the crush on the bush, so it won't over crush, and then the nut goes on the back and tightens it up. So it gives it the right amount of crush on the bush, gives a bit of movement. I've got some rubber grease on there, and then I've got the rubber grease on here, and as far as this goes, basically tighten it up. That's it. Righto, the shock absorbers are in. How convenient that they're black. Now, I'm not going to lie, that fought me. That took me a ridiculous amount of time. I can't believe how long it took. But the biggest problem was not that the shocks were hard to fit or anything. I couldn't get the hardware. I couldn't get it to suit. One thing that I'm going to do is invest in a grab pack of like thousands and thousands of Imperial nuts and bolts, because I spend so much time looking for nuts and bolts just to get the job done that it infuriates me. But they're in now, so my fury has ceased, and I have to say a cold adult beverage did take the edge off. Alright, I will finish putting these together. So I've got this outer pad in here, clip just goes across there like that. And then the inner pad, oh, splinter. Inner pad just sits in there like that. And then I've got to flip this upside down and put these guys in. So that one goes like that. No, it doesn't, it goes like that. I'm just going to put that there. I'm not going to tighten it because I'm going to take it back out again to put some Loctite on it, but I just want to hold it together for the moment. So I like to just put a spot of Loctite on the bolt here, just to stop it coming undone. I'm going to put some brake and caliper grease on all of the contact areas for the slide here, so on various parts where the this part here needs to slide across on the main body of the caliper. That'll make it flow nice and smoothly without grabbing, be able to return so it's not going to stick. Just all the good stuff that you want. Your brakes work. Apparently that's a good thing. Don't want to go crazy with it because I don't want it to end up on my pads or on my discs, but I want there to be enough so that it's going to do the job. So it's a bit like Goldilocks, just right. And the final new component to go on is new hoses, and I'm using the same copper washers, but I gave them a clean up to make sure they're nice and flat. Don't want any contaminants in there either. So we just pop that in there like that. The copper washer is softer than the metals, so the other metals, so that when you do it up, it gives a little bit of a crush, only a little bit, to help it seal. So I'll do this up first, because the other end, this end here, is where the metal, the hard pipe goes in, and you can rotate the end on that, whereas this here, you don't want to go having to untwist this as part of the process. Get my pipe spanner on there, preferably the right size. Yep, right size, 5/8. Tighten that up. Okay, got my best work sandals on. So we'll get these calipers on. So main thing we need to be sure of is that everything's bolted up tightly, obviously. So this is our bolt holes here. We've got these bolts, they go in here, hold the caliper in place, and then our brake pipe will come through here and be fixed up on top of the chassis rail into these brackets, and then with clips. So we'll worry about that in a moment. These go in the way. Usually you want your bleeder nipple to be pointing up, and this, it doesn't look like it points up, but it actually is. It's at the top of it. So this goes in here. So while it's pointing backwards, it's actually at the top of the piston. It's in the middle of it. The idea is that it's at the highest point so that it can bleed the air out. So I've got a washer on here, so slot that in there. Nope, that missed. They fit in nice and snugly into the stub axle here. Get the top one lined up without doing it up. And then just pivot it a bit and get the bottom one in. Just move it back a bit. That goes in. Always do things up by hand as much as you can at least several turns so that you don't cross thread them. If it's tight, stop, have a look at it. If you can do it up by finger tight in the first place, then you're usually going to be pretty good. So we'll just rattle this up. This. And then I'm going to spanner tighten it. I do often put Loctite on things, but these got spring washers. I don't feel it's necessary, but wrong way. I am going to make sure it's nice and tight. You don't want your brake hose rubbing on any components or anything like that. And if you get it right, while it's close to other components, they're not rubbing. Now I can rattle this a little bit at the moment, and that's because there's no hydraulic fluid in there just yet to hold the piston out against the caliper, against the disc. I'll just tighten this up, because I hadn't. I'll tighten that so that when I go to bleed the brakes, I don't straight away have a leak. Put the cap on. Now I've got the hose over here. Let's bring you over here. Got the hose over here. And I need to get this bracket, and you've got these little locating pins. So that goes in there like such. Now, I'm not sure, with the Gerlock calipers, the hose goes here. There's also allocations in the chassis back here. Now, I can't remember if that's for the PBR or if it's for drum brakes. But this is where we're going in this application. There's a bit of paint in these threaded holes, so I'll just get it started with a spanner. Rattle that in. Whenever I rattle anything, I like still pinch it up by hand just to make sure. And then our hose can only really go one way. It is only just the right length. So it goes into that hole. As I said, it's only just the right length. There's not really anything spare. And the suspension is at full droop at the moment. And there's these little edge lugs here, just there. And the idea is that this sits in there, and it sits in nice and snug like that, and then you put your clip with that face pointing away from the hose like that, tap that down. I like to have them straight because I can't sleep at night otherwise. And it looks like that. And there you have it. So you can see where the hose is routed there. Not kinking, it's not rubbing on anything. It's not too long. Couldn't be any shorter if it tried. And remember, there's no weight on the suspension, so when the wheel gets pushed up, then it'll just take any tension out of that. You can see that's not tense. So we're done up here. We've got our pads in, got our hose nipped up with our copper washer, got our bleeder nipple done up, hose over here, clipped into the chassis, ready to go. We're ready for our hard lines. I think that'll do me for today. It's been a pretty big day. Let's have a look. Got that done. And got all that done. I've got to rebuild the back brakes. So take the wheels back off, put all new shoes in, new wheel cylinders, new pipes. Oh, and I did put the pipe on here as well earlier. I think I've got it the right way. So there's a bracket that mounts on the back of the diff there. Comes up here. The hard lines come out here and here across to the wheel cylinders. And then this one mounts up into the chassis. with a clip. And hard lines come around, I think from memory they trace around this way, around the side of the chassis. Okay, I'm going to clean up and then I'm going inside. Played around with a couple of little things. I've just got a couple of my fittings ready to go for my brake pipes, so that when I make those up, just making sure I've got enough. In fact, I need to buy a couple, so got those in. Just need to get the hard pipe done and a fuel tank in. Now, I'll be clear, I'm pretty convinced that I haven't got the fuel tank installed the way it's supposed to be. I don't usually use these, or I'll correct that, I haven't used a standard tank before. I've got a Maloo tank in Toxic, so that's a bit of a new one for me. But I think I've got it pretty close, and even if it's not exactly right, I'm really happy with it because it's not going anywhere. So I'll show you what I've done, and it's either right or wrong. So you've got your straps. So there's these brackets here that go onto the tonner chassis. Can only go one way. This one's got like a twisted end on it, so you can't get those mixed up. These straps, you'll just have to work it out. I can't really explain to you, except that the one on this side, the top one, is long, and then the bottom one is quite short. Whereas this one, you can see this is short, this one's a bit longer. The bottom ones are a similar shape, the top ones are a similar shape, but they're different shape to each other. It's hard to explain. But these brackets have taken me a while, and I think I've got it right. And if I haven't, I'm still very happy with it. So what I've got, this strap coming up, sitting on top of this plate. Then this guy, it's got a notch in the center of it, this big guy. He comes down, I've got him pointing down, and he's up against the tank. I've got to stop the tank moving forward. And then this strap comes down, and I've got the nut and bolt. I've got the bolt coming up from the bottom. I don't think it matters either way. I just did it that way because when I'm underneath, if I need to, I can get it out without having to worry about trying to clear the bolt. Doesn't matter, I don't think. So I've got all three parts on top of this. Strap, bracket facing down, strap on top. Over here, same thing, except, sorry, that's not right. Yes, it is right. Yeah. Over here, I've actually got the strap on the bottom of the bracket, and then I've got this guy. Why did I put it on the bottom of the bracket? I don't know. Not really sure. Could probably put it on the top if I wanted, but I'm going to leave it. Strap on the bottom, but I could put it on the top like I've done on this side. Then I've got this one, but I've got it pointing up because it just didn't look right pointing down. And then this one, top strap going along. So you could have all three of them on top of the bracket, as I just said, but I've got this one pointing up, whereas this one I've got pointing down. I just think it works better, and they just stop the tank moving forward. On the back here, I've added an extra nut to the equation. So what I think is normal is that there's a bolt, a nut, there's a big washer, and there's a nut on the bottom. Now this is hard to film, so I'll try and explain it. What I've got the strap coming up from the bottom, then I've got this plate sitting on top of it, pointing down, and it sort of tucks into that lip, stops the tank from moving. It's sort of a little bit bent, the same as the shape of the tank is. I've got it going down. Then I've got a big washer, and this is a slot in this plate here to allow you adjustment backwards and forwards. Got a big washer there. Then this is a nut that I've put in that wasn't originally there. This is the mount on the chassis. Strap coming in. I put a washer there, but I forgot to put one on the other side. Then another nut, and then a bolt. So it's a big long bolt, and I've got 3 nuts on it. Originally they meant to have 2, I think, but I couldn't work out how to get it all tight, so everything's good. So what I've got, the bolt comes down, and I've got this nut and this nut tightening the top strap in place. And then the bottom nut tightens this clamp and the other strap in place. Once again, it's a little bit hard to explain unless you've done it. Yeah, it's a bit hard to know why I've done it, but that's how I've done it. It's working well. It's rock solid. It's not going anywhere. And I don't know, if you do it that way, I would be confident that it's mounted well. It's adjustable is the thing, and it sits exactly where it's supposed to. So if you've done this and you've got a photo of how it's meant to be, please flick me through a photo and I'll share it on my Facebook page, because it's here to help. But again, that worked for me. I think we're getting pretty close to the end of this video. I'll have to check my time. But we may put the power steering box in, we may not. But at the end of the day, we're looking pretty good. The great unveiling. Port steering and suspension. That's not what it says. Port steering, direction perfection. Port steering and alignment. Port Macquarie, 21 Chestnut Road, Port Macquarie. That old chestnut. This is the people, the person, Stewie, that came up with this kit. So this is the same steering box conversion that you saw me put into Toxic, if you watched that video. If you didn't, then this is the box. This is the kit. What do we get? Lots of bubble wrap. He's always been good at his packaging. A piece of pipe, okay. That's new to the kit. We have a new hard pipe. Or pressure pipe, I should say. The intermediate arm, I think it's called, with a brand spanking new knuckle, and got the fitting, now that's for this pipe, the fitting for the low pressure pipe into the box, ready flared, spare O-rings, etc. Brand new high tensile hardware to bolt the box to the frame. He leaves no stone unturned. Beautifully typed up instructions. Look at that. Lovely. I don't even need to read that, but I will for your benefit. And this is the part. This is the thing. This is the 3-to-1, 3 turns lock to lock steering box conversion from port steering and alignment. It looks massive. Fits perfectly into the frame. I'll show you that being installed and just how well it works. As I said, I got one of these in Toxic and it is a massive improvement. What have we got here? A bit more packaging. Okay, so that's it. I'll talk more about this as I go along, and when you decide how good it is, then you will know where to get this steering conversion from. Bolt in. You know, when you get kits and it says bolt in fit, nothing ever bolts in, apart from this, bolts in perfectly. Stay tuned. We'll be installing that very soon. Just a bit of a side-by-side comparison here. You can see the port steering and alignment conversion box here and the Holden power steering box. I've tried to line them up as best I can. The camera might be best there, but you can see how much longer this conversion box is. You would say this is not going to fit into the Holden chassis. Well, guess what? It fits absolutely perfectly. You don't have to change, mind you, it is part of the kit. You don't have to change the intermediate shaft. Stuart's just made a couple of little changes to how all this fits together so that it bolts straight in. And as I've said before, there's no such thing as a bolt-in conversion. It never happens. Apart from this, it bolts straight in. Everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. It's just longer and it's a better thing. After you've removed your power steering box, your original one, or whichever steering box, you're going to need to remove the pitman arm. Now, I've loosened the 1.25" nut off here, and then I've got a puller, and I'm pulling up underneath the pitman arm and pushing down on the shaft here. Now, there's less sophisticated, more brutal ways you can do this, but my suggestion would be that you try to get a puller from somewhere. I'm going to have to take this to the vise. Okay, let's see if I can do this without it falling on my foot, because I've got my work sandals on, and without scratching the life out of it. Okay. Thought she might pop, but she didn't. She just came off, so that's okay. So the puller that I'm using for this is this one here. I can't really tell you much about it. That's the type of puller I used. So we've got this nut, we've got this spring washer, we've got this pitman arm. We're going to be using that on the new steering box. Time to start fitting this port steering and alignment steering box up. So, firstly, I will say that if your car has manual steering, you're going to need to get a power steering pitman arm. And also, as I've mentioned about the short steering arms before, according to Stewie's information, all HQs had short steering arms. I can neither confirm or deny that. But you will need short steering arms regardless of what you have got at the moment. And I've mentioned that before. So we're going to fit this box up. You'll have to excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I think I've got a cold. Got to fit this steering box up. And with the kit, Stewie supplies 3 brand new bolts and washers. And they just bolt up to the standard location that the steering box went previously, because, as I said, this is a bolt-up conversion. And because I'm putting this onto a bare chassis and not into a vehicle, then there are some distinct differences between what I'm doing and what the instructions say, because nothing is installed. I don't have to disconnect anything, and I don't have a car body or a steering column or an intermediate shaft or anything in the way. So this is when you're building from scratch, I guess, whereas the instructions come from the direction of you're building a car. And so you've already got a car and you're putting a steering box in there. So obviously what I'm doing here is going to be an easier process. But I have previously shown the installation in a car. Okay, so I'm just going to lift the box into place and then get some of the threads done up. So watch how neatly this thing fits into this spot. Got it all bolted in place there. What I did have when I was installing it was I found that the body of the box was contacting the frame before this ear and the ear below there were able to bolt up to the chassis. Haven't encountered that before. On Toxic there was no issues whatsoever. It's fair to say that each chassis is not exactly the same. They're a stamped item, they come from different factories. So I spoke to Stu from Port Steering and Alignment, and he said that he's only come across that once before, and he's actually adding a change to his kit, and that is that he's going to be including spacers into the kit. And in this case, I've actually just used washers, and they're only 1.6 millimeters thick. I've got 3 washers, so I put them on all 3 mounting points, and that just brought the box out 1.6 millimeters, still perfectly in alignment, and it clears perfectly. As I said, Stewie's fitted a number of these, and he's only come across this once before, and it was actually very recently. So in the kits, unlike what I've got, there will be the new bolts with the washers, but there will also be an additional spacer for this. And if you don't need it, you don't use it. But if you do need it, it's there to go. He's also going to be extending the bolts by a good few millimeters to allow for that, because this bolt was just the right length previously, but once it's spaced out, it just becomes a little bit too short. So I'm not using the hardware supplied, the bolts and the washers supplied, but you won't have that issue in the future. You will have slightly longer bolts, and you'll be supplied with 3 spacers should you need to do this. As I said, on Toxic, I didn't need to do it, and on all of the ones that Stewie has done, he's never needed this. But just very recently, another person and myself have come up with the same issue. It's only a very small issue. It took minutes to rectify and 1 phone call. There it is. It's bolted in place. So everything lines up where it's supposed to. Now I just need to fit my power steering pitman arm. Next thing I'm going to do is offer up the intermediate shaft onto the flex coupler. Now, the instructions are very clear about where to position everything. Again, this is a bare chassis, but really what you want to do is ensure that the box is in its middle position, so its neutral position. And how to check that, this steering box is 3 turns lock to lock. So if I turn it half, 1, 1.5, I should be just about at the end of the cycle. Just a tad more, so I'll take it back here. Half, 1, 1.5, should be about the same distance the opposite direction. Half, 1, 1.5, and a little bit more. Yep. Okay, so if I take this back to neutral, so you take it there, I go half, 1, 1.5, and what I've got is the bolts for the flex coupler, the bolts on the flex coupler I should say, are horizontal. So these bolts here are horizontal, so in line with the ground, and these ones are vertical, straight up and down. Now, what we then want to do is offer our intermediate shaft and flex coupler up here, and we want to ensure that this part here of the clamp is horizontal with the ground. So this is where it goes onto the steering column, so that'll point down, and these will remain in the right place. So before I do it up, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if we look at this, the bolt that goes onto the steering column is horizontal, so across this way, and then so are the bolts on the flex coupler, nice and horizontal, and the steering wheel is centered. So what that means is when we go to put our column in, we'll be able to center our steering wheel right from the beginning, and then the wheel alignment can be adjusted, adjusting the tie rod ends to get the wheel alignment perfect, but the steering wheel will be centered. So I'm going to put some washers and nuts on that. We've got a 1/2 inch bolt with a 9/16 nut. So just tightening these up. Now the reality is I'm not really ready to have all this, or the steering shaft, or the extension shaft connected yet, but I'm putting it in for the sake of the video. Ideally I'd put this in after I'd got the cab done. Just put that back to where it's meant to be. But it will benefit you guys, I think, to see this all completely installed. So within the instructions, port steering and suspension do advise to leave the mounting bolts for the box loose and so on until everything is installed, including the pitman arm. And the reason being is that movement, by not having them tight, just allows you to be able to position everything so that you're not fighting with getting everything installed. But because I've got so much room, in fact I'm standing where the engine should be, it's really not an issue. Okay, so we've got those done up, so that's all good. And now I can fit the pitman arm. Fitting our power steering pitman arm, they can only go one way. This hole is tapered, as is this. This goes onto the drag link, cross link here, onto that ball joint, and this goes onto the bottom of our steering box. Now, again, Stu suggests to leave this stuff loose so that you can move it around within the car, and he also suggests having the sway bar loose and dropped, just the D shackles off. Again, just to explain, I don't need that because I've got so much space. I can just move my drag link around. So what do we need to make sure? Firstly, we want to get our idler arm in line with the chassis. And then when we put our drag link on, because the box is positioned in its right place, it will go on the right way. So there's some little flat sectors within here. There's 4 of them, and you could orientate this 4 different ways, but there's only one right way, and the right way is pointing straight back in line with the chassis, the same as the idler arm, with the steering box pointing forward in that central neutral position, as I explained. So I'm just going to position this. I'm just going to push the drag link down a bit, and this slots straight into place. The drag link, sorry, the pivot arm, and that goes straight into place. And then what we have, I'll put my 1.25" spring washer and bolt on the bottom here and do it up really tight, and then put my castellated nut and split pin up here, and you can see the position of this, the position of this, and this is only moved very slightly in the process, but the position of that, I'll just square that up so that you can see exactly how it's supposed to be. And this is perfectly horizontal. This is all still perfectly in place as it's supposed to be. So everything is ready to go. Now, I haven't done the wheel alignment yet, but you can see the wheels are sort of pointing forward. They're actually pointing out a bit, in a bit I should say, on both sides. So that's simply a matter of adjusting my tie rod ends. If I turn these out, in my case, it swings the wheel around. It's not changing anything that I just did. All it is doing is pushing the steering arm out, which is rotating the disc out that way, or the hub out that way, and then I can do the same on this side, and we'll worry about that later. But the steering box, I've just got to do everything up, and then physically it's installed. There's just a matter of the high and low pressure pipes and everything, which I'm not going to put on at the moment. That's for another time, but they will connect up to our power steering pump. They will connect straight up to this guy here, and the hoses that Stu has sent me are specific for the Holden installation. Toxic's got a 350 Chev in it, so the high pressure pipe is suitable for it, because the power steering pump in the Chev, on mine, is over there. Now, while I don't want the pipes there at the moment, I'm going to put them in so that you can see what comes in the kit and how they go. So on your port steering and alignment reconditioned steering box, you've got these caps and you've got these fittings. So this one here, this is for your low pressure pipe. You can't get them mixed up because, as in the location, because the holes are different sizes. So this one goes in here and you tighten it off. Now there is an O-ring on the bottom of it there. It's already greased when it's in the kit, and in the kit you actually get 2 spare O-rings, so you don't need to use those. They're spares in case you damage it somehow, and a couple of hose clamps for your low pressure pipe. So I'm not going to do that up, but you get the idea. And this is your low pressure pipe, beautiful colour, and it's the correct size PSI rating hydraulic pipe, so it will go up to power steering box on this case, which is up above where we are. And then you've got the high pressure pipe, and this has been specifically made to fit the Holden power steering box on this end, so it's got the appropriate fitting. And then on the Holden power steering pump, I should say, on this end, and on this end the port steering and alignment power steering box here. So you can see it's also got an O-ring, so this is a different type of fitting to what would be on your Holden. So this goes in here. Once again, you can't get it mixed up. This is different to this, and it is different to that. So it can only go one way. So that goes in there. Once again, I'm not going to tighten it fully, but that heads up to your power steering box. If you've already got power steering, that is it. Connect this to your power steering, connect this to your power steering pump, and you've got the rest installed. There's just a matter of the bleeding process. bleeding the air out of it, and Stu is very specific about how to go about that, and it works. So that is pretty much it in a nutshell. Fits perfectly. This is designed to fit the standard architecture of a Holden frame, HQ to WB, no modifications. I, as you may remember, had to move my steering, my sway bar forward. It could be, in some instances, that the sway bar needs to be moved forward if it's an oversize, but what I've found is that you have to do that anyway to clear the pitman arm. So it's all a good thing. So I strongly suggest that if you're interested in this, then give Stuart Drummond from Port Steering in Port Macquarie a call. There's his number just there. And he's a very helpful guy, a very knowledgeable guy. And as it says here, he's been doing direction perfection since 1997. So he knows his gear. Oh, is it finished, has it? Well, I've been working hard while you've been watching that. Well, I hope you enjoyed the content. That was part 5 of 6 parts of the HQ 1-tonner chassis rebuild. I'm really looking forward to jumping in FrankenInter and driving with all that new gear, particularly that Port Steering and alignment steering box, because they're a good thing. So why don't you pick up an angle grinder and cut something, or get one bolt and work on that one bolt on your project. It's not going to fix itself. But remember, take some time to relax every now and then, because life's too short not to. So until that time, stay safe. Thank you for spending some time with me, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm going to go back to work. See ya. Life's good. Have a drink, please, waiter.